Hey, I'm Peter Holcombe. I've been traveling the last almost 7 years continuously. Everything from a Class C RV to lately we've been in 2 Revel vans. This one here is our second. It's the 2021 Revel. It's been wonderful.
I'm Kathy Holcombe. I'm a third of Famagogo with my family, Peter and Abby. We've lived full-time on the road for the last 7 years. We've been to 49 states, 23 countries and counting, and we're in the midst of taking our Revel around the world. We are currently in Moab, Utah. When Peter told me that we were going to go to Agile Offroad to get our van tricked out, I was kind of like, all right, whatever, we're going to get this cool looking van and that'll be great, but I totally didn't get it.
My wife maybe thought that the suspension stuff we were doing was some sort of midlife crisis.
I didn't really have any ideas about what it would do for us. I kind of thought it was just to look cool.
But it was actually a really big improvement, and the first night that we drove away from Agile with this kid on, she instantly felt it as we went over the first little crack in the street.
And it's been amazing how much it's changed the driving experience for me. I couldn't believe it. Like, we would go over speed bumps and you could just go da-dunk, da-dunk, and it took the weight of the trailer so much better. And just going around corners, I found myself going 80 pulling the trailer, which I've never done before, but it just felt safer and easier and way more comfortable.
We had the RIP kit put on ours. We also put on the heavy duty leaf springs, and it has made a world of difference in our driving. We've pulled a trailer
for the past 7 years. The trailer would kind of bounce around our van, and
the wobble, as we like to call it, when you go over a diagonal bump, and the wobble was gone. Mercedes makes them to handle a certain amount of weight, and they drive beautifully like that. But then us as travelers, we put all this stuff, between interiors and toys and people into our vans, and I think by the time we've got them loaded up, we are maxing the suspension out on these things. And so when you go to Agile Offroad and they put the RIP kit on, it kind of brings that suspension back to the level of where it needs to be to handle that weight. And therefore, it gives you that performance ride that we all really want. It is like night and day off-road, but when you're going down the highway at 70, 75 miles an hour and you hit those gentle bumps, it just soaks them up, and you feel like you've got such a better connection to the road. It feels safer, more secure, and a lot more comfortable.
I think when we upgraded from the 245 tires to the 275, that it just kind of helped smooth out our ride. I think it was a great companion upgrade to the Agile RIP kit. Between the two of those things, I think it just completely smoothed out our ride and made driving really fun. It's funny, Peter and I find ourselves arguing over who gets to drive right now. And after 7 years and 300,000 miles on the road, to still be wanting to be behind the wheel driving, I think that's a pretty cool thing. So, one of the other things that Peter was super excited about at Agile was we got an onboard air compressor. It's right underneath the hood right there. And again, it kind of seemed like a goofy toy that we would never really use. And when we went 4x4ing for the first time after our time at Agile, we aired down the tires. And that's something I've never actually done going off-road before. And we did this 26-mile washboarded road, and we aired down the tires. We normally keep them at 50 PSI in the front and 70 in the back. And we aired them all down to 25. And I couldn't believe how much more pleasant it made the drive down this washboardy rough road. Instead of like jarring your teeth loose as you're driving along, it just kind of rolled over everything a lot more smoothly. It's almost like you were just on air moving like this across these really rough terrain, which was great. And that's where the onboard air comes in, because when we were finished with that and pulling onto the blacktop, we didn't have to go to a gas station to air up our tires. We just got the hose, attached it to the compressor, aired up our tires, and we were good to go. And it's been probably 3 weeks since we were at Agile, and we've probably aired up our tires, aired them down and aired them back up a dozen times. Like, we use it all the time. I never would have guessed we would do that, but it's turned out to be incredibly handy. And we had a low tire on our trailer, and we could even air that up without having to deal with going into the gas station. So that was pretty cool too.
So we just finished going up a pretty rough dirt road here. It really makes a huge difference in your ride quality if you can air down your tires when you're off-road. This does a couple of things. It gives your tires, helps your suspension, and it works a little bit more of a shock absorber. It also gives you a bigger traction patch. It also, therefore, that traction patch being larger helps you float through sand. It takes the jarring of rocks away. It does a lot of great advantages. And a big part of being able to air up and air down when you need to is having an onboard air compressor. Agile Offroad put an ARB compressor. It's mounted right in here, right underneath the air box for the interior. And I've got a pneumatic port here under the hood and another one under the rear hitch. You can hear the compressor running. It's airing up my tire now. It'll take maybe 30 seconds to a minute to get it where I want it to be, and off we go. It's also handy to have a nice air chuck to check on your pressure as it goes. With this pneumatic port on the front and the back of my van, it gives me super easy access with this hose to air up my tires.
When we talked about getting an additional 28-gallon fuel tank for our van, I was thinking we were going to use it in South America where diesel is sparse. And what it's turned out to be is we just have to deal with gas stations way less frequently, half as much in fact. And when you're pulling a trailer, that is a tricky thing, especially in California where everything is really tight. So now we fill up our 50 gallons of fuel and we are good to go. We have to stop for other things like groceries, things like that before we ever have to stop to get fuel. It's been amazing.
This tank is located where the old spare tire used to be. So it's in the very back up on underneath.
And so we needed to have a new location for our spare tire. And John and the crew put a rear tire carrier on the back of our Revel, which is a great out-of-the-way location to keep this essential piece of equipment while giving us additional fuel capacity so that we can go further and further off the beaten path. The really nice design feature of the rear tire carrier is that it's attached to the back door. So you don't have to move anything or unlatch anything. All you have to do is open the back door, the tire swings with it. When you're done, you close the back door and it's good to go.
It's basically like we have 2 fuel tanks plus a little.
It's been a total surprise how useful that is. It's really neat because we can look for low-price diesel, low-cost diesel, and just get the best price. It's ended up saving us a ton of money because we don't have to buy it whenever we're out of fuel. We can pick and choose where we stop to refill our tanks.
We're stopping half as much for fuel. It's giving us more time to do other things. It also is really nice when you get out somewhere in the backcountry like we prefer to be and you realize you're down to a half a tank. You just reach down and you can pump your tank completely full. And with this you have an added range, but also you have just that kind of safety margin. When you're out in the wilds, it gives you the ability to just keep your main tank topped off and go where you want to go and really just not be worrying about fuel. And that's been really liberating.
Well, John at Agile actually guaranteed me that if we installed this winch on our van, that we would never have to use it. And so far that's proven to be true, so I don't have any real world experience on whether or not the winch is cool, other than that we haven't gotten stuck since we had it. So there you have it.
Another thing that can really help is a winch. Now we're talking you're really stuck, and honestly I think most people with winches are going to say they use their winch to pull out other people more than themselves, but I'm really excited about having a winch as another line of defense, another way to possibly just take care of ourselves and be responsible for ourselves and get ourselves out of a sticky situation. After everything was installed, we took the van out into their parking lot. We hooked my winch up to their forklift and they showed me how to use all the winch controls. We spooled the cable, which is very important on a winch that you get it spooled on there right, but as they're doing that, they're teaching me everything about the winch. Not only how to work it, but where to keep my fingers out of, safety things with the winch, And a winch can be a great tool, but as a lot of tools, they can also be very dangerous. So I felt really great that these guys who installed hundreds or thousands of these winches took the time to actually explain the ins and outs of the winch and the controller, and more importantly, you know, the things that I don't want to do with my winch and how to keep it safe. And then they also referred me on to some places where I could learn more about winching and safety with winching.
So the lights that we have all over our van, I thought were kind of for looks and not really all that important. And I kind of have given Peter a really hard time about being able to see us from the moon. But they're amazing. As photographers, we are always photographing until sunset, until it's dark. And then we have to go find a campsite at night. So we're constantly driving down dirt roads in the dark. And having all of the Lightforce lights all over our van has made it so easy and safe to go off-road at night and have it lit up just like it is daylight.
I've always kind of lusted after driving lights, and honestly, on all my pickups and different vehicles I've had up until recently, I've always thought, well, the stock high beams are good enough. But finally, I decided I want to give it a try. We're driving more and more off-road. We're in a larger vehicle. It's even more critical that you see where you're going, you see what the hazards are, and you can avoid them. We spend a lot of time driving at night. As a photographer, I'm usually using my whole day to photograph, and that means I'm packing up, I'm done for the day after dark. So I'm wandering around in the desert or who knows where, looking for a campsite well after dark.
Not only do we have lights on the front of the van, we have lights on the back of the van.
These Lightforce driving lights have been amazing. On the front here, I have two of the Genesis LED driving lights. And on the top, I have the double row 40-inch Lightforce light bar. And holy smokes, these things in unison just light the whole area up like daylight. And you can see further and more clearly than ever. It has been so amazing. And you know, you think of driving lights for, you know, maybe going faster on rougher terrain. And yeah, it's nice for that.
But probably the best application was when we were checking into a campground in Huntington Beach. The campground host had to walk around to the back to get our license plate, and we flipped on the lights, and she was elated. She was so happy about the extra light that she gave us extra special attention, which was really nice.
There's been a few times we're driving with the low beams on, and you flip on the high beams, and it seems really bright, and then you flip on the Lightforce, and it is like 10, 20, 30, 100 times brighter than what it was like with just the high beams. It makes your high beams seem like they are covered in mud and dirty and aren't really doing anything for you. It's incredible.
Ah, skid plates. It's another thing I hope we never use. I don't think we've actually hit the skid plates yet, but it's comforting to know that they're there and that they're protecting the important things underneath our rig.
I've been stuck a few times in sand, probably more often on a motorcycle than in a car or a van. I was thinking, you know, we need a way to be more self-sufficient if we happen to get stuck in sand or mud or whatever. So the first thing that came to my mind is we need to get a pair of MaxTrax.
MaxTrax was another one of those things that I was like, oh yeah, that's just eye candy on the car to make it look tough, right? So on our way to Agile Offroad in San Diego, we went down this dirt road to find a place to camp, and we totally got stuck in the sand, and like really stuck. I was driving, I went too slow through the sand, and then we were stuck.
We just barely made it into California. We are pulling into camp for the night, I guess, on BLM, and we are stuck in the sand.
But they'll be kind of at an angle.
Yep.
But we got to get them to where they're flat, you know, under the crook of the tire.
Okay.
We are in the air on this side.
This never happens on like sunny, nice days. and the MaxTrax were amazing. Like, we just dug out behind the wheels, put the MaxTrax down, backed right out, and we're on our way in like 20 minutes. So they were not just eye candy. They are truly an asset if you're doing anything off-road.
We actually got 4 MaxTrax, so we have one for each tire. So if we really get buried, a lot of people just go with 2, but 4 is like the ultimate kit. Being a heavier, bigger vehicle, I think 4 is really nice. Once you get your MaxTrax, where are you going to put them? You know, MaxTrax makes some really great options for that. But what we found the best place to store them, where they were out of the way, they were secure, is to put them on the roof. Agile Offroad sells a kit that allows you to mount your MaxTrax straight onto the stock Revel roof rack. It's super easy. It took about 20 minutes to install the kit. And then our MaxTrax go on. They have these pins that go through all 4 corners of the MaxTrax. You turn them, it's kind of a keyhole shape, locks them on. And then you can even put a little padlock there if you want to secure your MaxTrax from theft. It's a great system. And so then I decided to use a secondary one of those that John at Agile did a few little tweaks on for me, and he allowed me to then mount them in a very similar way, but now I've got one in the front. And so when I come up my side ladder, I can step off my ladder straight onto MaxTrax and use that as a standing platform instead of standing on my roof or the bars or whatever. So this gives me the ability to have multifunctional use in my MaxTrax. And everyone who lives in a van or travels in a van a lot knows space is a premium, and having things with multifunction is critical. So having this extra MaxTrax there that I can actually stand and walk on it has been wonderful. I would say if you have a Revel van and you want to take it to the next level, meaning you want to drive it a little further, a little harder, take it to that place that's a little wilder, I think you have to go see the guys at Agile Offroad. I'm Peter Holcombe from Famagogo, and I'm a huge fan of Agile Offroad.